So, like I said, it's like our fifth webinar. We didn't have this problem before. Thank you for bearing with us. You know, we all have to be so flexible these days. And so I appreciate your flexibility. And let's just go back to the top. We will, we're talking about how to avoid losing your life savings to the nursing home. Thank you for joining us today. We're really glad you're here. I'm going to have a presentation. There'll be questions at the end, but there is a chat box on the lower part of your screen where you can ask questions as you go. And if it works, I'll answer them before the question and answer. Okay, I don't know how somehow people seem to get unmuted accidentally. So hopefully that will work better going forward. Okay. We know that with COVID-19, it makes everything more stressful, and planning how to pay for long-term care and not have your whole life savings go to the nursing home and then have to worry about if medical assistance will cover the rest of your care, that was already a challenge and difficult. And everything's kind of more difficult now. And like I said, it's got us thinking, well, what happens if something unexpected happens? If I unexpectedly get sick and start needing care, and what can I do to protect myself and my loved ones now? Well, at Safe Harbor, our goal is that we help families protect what matters most. That includes your health, your loved ones, and your hard-earned money. And so we understand what you're going through. We understand these things are even harder now. And we want to be here to help you. So that's why we're doing this for the first time as a webinar. And we're going to give you some free resources you can get started on today that can help you start protecting for the future so that you or your loved ones get the care you need, protect your money as much as possible, and still qualify for medical assistance so the government will pay if you need it. So I first want to tell you that I have a client who contacted us last year, and very sweet lady, I'll call her Elaine. She's about 64, and she was...
Margaret, can you mute Barbara?
Yeah, I keep muting her and it keeps unmuting, so I don't know why, but thank you. So yeah, everybody, I don't know that, Barbara, you're doing this. I don't but unmute if you can. You want to stay unmuted, so that
you want
to stay muted. That's right. I'm saying it opposite. Okay, so Elaine came with her sister, and she was doing fine living in senior living, and then she fell and injured her hip, and it was pretty bad injury. And so she was now in the nursing home and had been for a few weeks, and she was just hoping to get out and get back to her apartment. But in the meantime, the bill's like $10,000 a month. It was a problem. So they wanted to do some planning. Thank goodness they came, and we did some planning. But however, they did not come soon enough, which was really hard because they had sold a house. The three sisters inherited a house from the parents years before. And my client, Elaine, had lived in it for years, and which was fine with her sisters. Well, then they all decided to sell it. And they didn't realize that medical assistance has a 5-year look back. And this was in the 5-year look back window for her because they didn't know she was going to fall and hurt her hip, etc. So they didn't get legal advice. They didn't especially get elder law advice. They went to this closing. The three sisters owned the house. They were going to sell it. And they were going to give the extra money to my client to help her out. And the title company said, how about if you just, I know, you two sisters give it to Elaine, we'll sign the title work, so she's the only one on title. Then she by herself will sell it. And then we'll only have one 1099, it'll just be easier. So that was some bad legal advice from a non-lawyer. And so they did it, and then come to me a few years later, and we have to report to medical assistance what happened to the house in the last 5 years. We had to give them the paperwork. And they were like, well, she owned the whole house because her sisters gave it to her, and you sold it for under market value. And so we're going to impose a penalty because we weren't involved to tell them how to follow the rules about how to sell a house. And so what happened is here she was out of money, and the county wanted to impose a $90,000 penalty on her. It was incredibly stressful for the family. They had to pull out documents from years ago, prove years of care for the house. Everything is much, much harder to do after the fact. And we couldn't really undo what happened with this deed in the title company that made the problem 3 times the size that the problem would have been if that hadn't happened. So I am so motivated to help people come to us sooner so that we can advise them on how to do things like the house sale and so forth, because it might be within 5 years that you or your loved one applies for medical assistance and you don't know. And it's like an ounce of medicine is worth a pound of cure. I think I goofed that up. But anyway, a little work now is going to be much better and protect you in the long run. And so it's much better to be proactive and consumer. That's why I'm glad you're here. So if you have concerns for yourself or a loved one, like the following, you belong here. For instance, what if I need long-term care or my loved one? What if I need to move to assisted living or nursing home? What if I'm disabled for a long time? Or what if I suddenly get ill like Elaine did? I fell and now I broke my hip, and she's still in the nursing home. She may never get out, even though when she first came in, we hoped she'd get out soon. Well, what will happen to me if that happens? And my loved ones and my assets? How am I going to pay for it? What if I run out of money? Will there be money left for my spouse? Will I get the best care, or will I have to get substandard care because I don't have the money? And is there something I should do now to make it easier so that we're not going to be in crisis mode, that we don't make a big mistake that we regret later because we just didn't know? If you have any of those questions, I'm so glad you're here, because I want to help you avoid what I call chicken little planning. You know, when the crisis happens, then we're running around trying to deal with it. We've all been in that place, but we all want to avoid being in that place as much as possible. So it's going to be better if you plan ahead. I don't want you to end up like Grandpa Miller either. This is my friend Aaron Miller. He's an elder law attorney also. His grandparents lived in Colorado, and he's brokenhearted about how things worked out for them. They had a farm. They were very self-sufficient, you know, the greatest generation. And he used to love to go out there and play in the barn and spend time. Well, Grandma started slipping a little. They found her shoes in the freezer one day, and then they found her keys in a heat return duct. So I'm just wondering how long it took to find those keys. But they started wondering, and they had her tested for dementia, and sure enough, that was starting. So they had to start making accommodations. She's still at home. Then she had a heart attack, though, and that changed everything. Now she had to go into a nursing home for care. And Grandpa Miller paid out of pocket for years. He didn't know any different. He didn't see an elder law attorney. Nobody gave him a heads up. He just paid for 10 years until she died. Well, that really impoverished him. He was having trouble making ends meet. You know, he rented out to renters. He did what he could. And then he got sick, though. So he had to move from Colorado to Texas, which where Aaron lives. And his kids took care of him and put him in a home. And then they used up his money, and then the kids actually paid their own money to pay for Grandpa Miller's care. And this is not what Grandma and Grandpa Miller ever would have wanted. They didn't want it to be a burden on their kids. But none of the family knew that the kids didn't need to spend their retirement money. They didn't know about Medicaid. They didn't know how it works. So all their savings were decimated and all their hard work. And it just made the whole situation more devastating than it needed to be. It's hard enough to age and lose your health and see your loved ones pass away. That's hard for all of us. Let's not make it worse than it needs to be. So when you think ahead to retirement, or if you're in retirement now, the biggest financial hit that is likely to be is long-term care costs. So you can put in the chat screen. I guess there's a couple of comments. Okay. I'm wondering how much you think long-term care costs a year. If you can put that in there, like a range, the high end, maybe low to high end. It's very expensive, and I'll tell you in a couple minutes here, see if there's any estimates from you. But you could lose your life savings in the blink of an eye, and that doesn't have to be. I'm not seeing any guesses, and maybe I need to leave more time, but long-term care can cost up to $120,000 a year. Yes, 60,000, 25, 100,000. Okay, I like these. 60,000, probably very average. 25,000, yep, the low end. Got lots of clients paying that. And 100,000, yes, 120, over 10,000 a month. My dad's was that high towards the end. So obviously, if you're a single with 500,000, you may or may not have 5 years of care. If you're married with $1 million, you know, outside of your house, you might have enough for 5 years of care, but you might be in a 5-year look back period. That's that magic look back period you definitely want to plan for. So we created this smooth sailing, we call it the asset protection system. It helps you not only protect your assets, but get on medical assistance so you get care if you need it. So it's asset protection, particularly to help you pay for long-term care in a smart way, and to give you peace of mind so that you can not give all your life savings to the nursing home, but you can still get good care. And this is important, you have more options going forward than you do if you don't plan ahead. Because there's definitely, you probably have opinions about where you want to be, and you have more options if you plan ahead for where you're going to be. So we're not going to go through the whole smooth sailing asset protection system today. I mean, that, of course, we can't do that. But we're going to hit on some main important points for you. We're going to give you free resources so you can get started. And we're going to give you time for questions. And also, we're going to offer you at the very end a special personal and confidential and custom answers that for questions you might not want to ask in front of the whole group. So first, this is our today's objectives, our agenda. We're going to go over long-term care payment options. How do we pay for long-term care? Then we're going to have you answer questions. I mean, I'll answer the questions. It's not a quiz to you, it's a quiz for me. And then lastly, we'll offer free resources and give you some action steps for if you want to take the next step, since you made the effort to be here today. So I'm excited because you can get ahead of a lot of people and avoid a lot of problems if you start taking steps today. So what are common ways to pay for care? You guys can also chat with me on this if you have any ideas about how people can pay for the nursing home. So I'll start talking about the first one, which is you could just use private pay. It's called That's Your Own Money. And like I said, that can be, I have some numbers here. In a nursing home, $5,000 to $6,000 a month is the low end, up to $120,000 a year or higher. Cost of care for assisted living is $3,500 to $8,000 usually. Residential care homes is $2,500 to $5,000. Some are higher though. Some of the really nice dementia homes are higher than that. And cost of home care, this is surprising. You can spend more money at home than you can in a nursing home, depending on the level of care you need. So it can be a great option to stay where you want to be and save some money, but sometimes it costs more. So there's a wide range of at-home care. And so again, if you project that out 5 or 10 years, like Grandma Miller needed it for 10 years, and that does happen sometimes, that's a lot of money. So I don't see any ideas about how to pay. So we can private pay, but what if you run out of money or you don't have enough money? So I'll just go on to the next one, long-term care insurance. If you guys have long-term care insurance, please mention that in the chat that you have it. I'm interested to know how many have it. So if you have it, that's good. It doesn't solve everything though. That doesn't mean you don't still need to plan. If you don't have it, don't despair. It's not the be all and end all. It's nice to have, but again, there's restrictions on these policies. Some are better than others. The older ones are definitely better than the newer ones. The one I have isn't as good as the original ones, but they can definitely help. And we take a look at that and just see how it does, how well it helps. But some of them will exclude in-home care, insurance. There can be exclusions that you maybe didn't realize when you bought the policy. So that's another good benefit, though, that you may have. And if you don't have, it may not be too late that you could get it, but we can recommend people. So if you don't have long-term care insurance or it's exhausted and you're running out of money, then there are government benefits, thankfully. Medicare is the first one people think of. So Medicare is actually not for long-term care insurance. It's not long-term care. It's not designed to pay for long-term care. It will only pay the first 20 days. Like when Elaine broke her hip and went in, it paid for about 20 days. And then there's a copay up to about 100 days. So that's the most. It covers about 3 months. Let's say you're in the hospital, then you go to transitional care, and it will be covering that for about 3 months. Then it goes to Medicaid. So Medicaid, it's confusing because it's almost like Medicare, but it's different. Medicaid, it is federal money combined with state money, and it's administered by the states. So Medicaid goes state by state for the 50 states. In Minnesota, we call our Medicaid medical assistance, or MA. But it's really just Minnesota's version. And in Minnesota, it's administered by the counties. So we apply to your county. That's how it is. So it's a combined federal and state program, federal and state law, administered by the counties in Minnesota. So I wish that Grandpa Miller knew about medical assistance or Medicaid, because then he wouldn't spend all his money on his wife's care for 10 years and then had to move and have his kids take care of him, and then have his kids pay their retirement for his care. So this is the primary payer of long-term care in the country besides ourselves. And what I am going to talk about today is Medicaid for people over 65. We also help people under 65 who need Medicaid, but there's a bunch of different programs. I call it the alphabet soup of different programs, and it depends on what you qualify for. And it's really important if you're under 65 and you qualify for one of these programs to get on. So we'd love to help with that, but that's a different conversation. Today, we're just going to talk about over 65 for medical assistance. Another payer I want to mention is the VA benefits. So this is, VA benefits are for wartime veterans and their spouses. And I'll tell you honestly, a lot of our clients don't end up using these, because if it comes to going to a nursing home, there's like a waiting list of 1 to 2 years. So a lot of times they don't have the luxury of doing that. Sometimes they do. You can also get veterans benefits to come in the home and help you in the home. So there is some relief there. But medical assistance is the focus of the talk and is the main government payer of long-term care in the country. So let's talk more about medical assistance. It has complex rules. And the rules are, I would say, they're not always consistently interpreted or applied by the counties. So that makes it kind of difficult for us as practitioners to advise you. So you'll notice with the rules, sometimes we'll say, well, we think this is the safest thing to do. You might get by with that. And we can help you develop a plan for what to do with it. But just know that it's complicated and it's not always consistently applied. And it's not intuitive. So people are often very surprised by the rules of medical assistance. And they don't make sense and they can seem heartless. And we completely understand that. But given all the complications, there are asset protection strategies you can do that we're really happy about that can benefit you. There is some good news here, but the time to plan is now. This is because of the 5-year look back. So they will ask, when we apply, we put an application for you, we're signing it, and we're swearing under oath that it's true, and so are you. And so it's important to be accurate. And they'll say, did you make any gifts in the last 60 months? And then you got to disclose the gifts. And that would be anything where you gave something of value to someone else and didn't receive equal value back. So a lot of times people will say, no, I didn't make any gifts. And then after a while, they'll start to remember, well, I gave the car to my grandson, and then I do the Christmas and birthday gifts, and I give to my church or in this Red Cross, and I things just start to come out like, oh yeah, and then I gave my son the really good deal on the house, etc. All these things that are like normal, loving things we do for our kids and our family members, Once you get to medical assistance, all of a sudden it's like a no-no. Oh, you got a penalty now. So this is one of the reasons why we see it's really good to plan ahead. Another good example is selling the house, because anytime you do something major like sell a house or liquidate an asset, they're going to want to see, where's the paper trail? Where'd all that money go? Did you get enough money for the house, and where did it go? And it is a pain, but if we plan ahead for it, it's much easier. So we're going to show you an asset protection plan. Here, let me get my slides out. I'll go to the next slide, Megan. Oh, yep, let me tell you about that. I want to tell you these terms, MA long-term care versus elderly waiver. MA long-term care is traditional. Think nursing home. So you're in the nursing home, you don't have enough money, the state through medical assistance through the county will come in and help pay for your care. Elderly waiver, Minnesota developed years ago, and they went to the feds and said, we want a waiver or a variance. We want to try something new. We want to help people stay in their homes and still have medical assistance help. So can we try this? And they said, yes. They did like a 3-month trial, and it was such a success. It's been in place ever since. The rules are really similar, but they're not exactly the same. But for qualifying, they're really pretty similar. So I'm going to lump them together. Just so you know, there is Medicaid available if you want to stay at home, or elderly waiver also applies in assisted livings. But this is what you need to know. MA long-term care is an entitlement. That means if I need nursing home care and I qualify for medical assistance, the nursing home has to take me and medical assistance has to pay. That's an entitlement. Elderly waiver is not an entitlement. So the assisted living can say, we only have 3 rooms that are for elderly waiver. So you come here and you private pay for 2 years, and then you can get on our list for the elderly waiver rooms, but we can't guarantee it. And the reason is, of course, they make a lot less money if medical assistance is paying. Medical assistance will pay a discounted rate, and they can't afford, practically speaking, to have everybody on medical assistance. So those are the 2 differences. But we help you with that too, and it becomes important when you're choosing where you're going to live. And when you might go on medical assistance and when they'll take you. And so we help you plan through all that too. But just remember, there's MA long-term care and EW or elderly waiver, really similar rules for this at this point. That's a common question we get, so I just wanted to bring that up. Okay, the time to plan is now. I talked about that, so we can skip up to the asset protection plan. Thank you, Megan. So now, please, I just want to encourage you to put questions in the chat box if you have them while I'm talking. This is getting a little more complicated. And if you're on the phone, you won't be able to see my diagram. But I have a diagram here with a pie chart. And let's say this client has $600,000. This is a single person. So I'm making it simple. You can keep $3,000 when you go on medical assistance. That's not much, right? So the rest of your $597,000 you would spend on your care until you run out, and then you'd apply, and then Minnesota would pay after you spent your $600,000. So that's just the traditional what happens if you don't plan. Well, and hopefully if you still qualify and you didn't break any of the rules, then you'll go on medical assistance. So you pay $597,000 of your hard-earned money. You save the government the same amount, but you're risking not even qualifying if you don't know the rules ahead of time. But hopefully you will know the rules ahead of time. One of the questions I get is, if I'm in a nursing home and I need care and I don't qualify, they're not really going to kick me out. Yes, they probably will really kick you out. I have a really good nursing home nearby. I think it's really well run, and have a relationship with a social worker there. And I said, my clients don't really believe that people get kicked out. And this is a great nonprofit. And she said, well, we had to kick out 3 people last month because they violated the rules. Like, one woman inherited a bunch of money and she just gave it away instead of using it to pay for her care. And the county found out about it, and they, took her off of medical assistance. And they said, we can't afford to stay in business if we don't. So it is a risk. but that's the first. Plan A, you just pay all your money until you have 3,000 left and then you're done. Plan B, this is an example. Every asset protection plan is custom. You can go to the next slide, Megan, please. And kind of hard to talk about in general. I don't see the next slide. Are you moving it? Oh, there. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So in this slide, for those of you who can see it, you can see this client is saving approximately half their money is really what's happening here. So we gave them and worked with them on a few different strategies. You know, we have some strategies that are legal in our back pocket, and we work with you on them to figure out what makes sense for your family. In this case, for example, they prepaid a funeral. Always recommended, good thing to do, and especially before you go on medical assistance. They maybe paid their family because they were providing care, and we helped them get a contract in place and timesheets and document it all, because that is one thing the county will want to have documented. And there's a few other strategies that would depend on the person and the family, what you might be doing. If you had a house, then that would also be in this, but we did this more simply with no house. So what this person was able to do then, they did these smaller strategies like the funeral, paying their family some money. Oh, they paid some money for attorney's fees, that's allowed. But they're gonna save way more than they spend. So now they had a bunch of money left. So they gave $250,000, say, to a couple kids they have who are very trustworthy. They either put it in a trust, which is the best way to do it, or maybe into a joint account. And the kids are gonna keep the money in there, and they just have a verbal agreement with the parents. You know, we're going to use this to help mom and dad if they need it. Or I guess this is a single person. We're going to use this to help you, mom, if you need it. And otherwise we're not going to touch it till you pass away. The risk is, of course, that the kids don't follow the parents' wishes. But we have a lot of clients who feel they trust their kids, and we get the kids involved and we feel they seem trustworthy too. And so there's quite a few clients who like to do this. So they give, say, $250,000 into this pot of money that the kids have in their name. It's legally theirs, but we're hoping they keep their word and they help the parents out. Then the parents buy a Medicaid compliant annuity for $290,000. These are rough numbers. This is new in Minnesota for about 6 years now. We've been able to do Medicaid compliant annuities, and not all elder law attorneys are doing them, but we've been doing them for a couple years. And we knew other attorneys who were doing them before us. I didn't want my clients to be the first guinea pigs in the state, but they've been going well with the counties. With DHS has acknowledged they're allowed. And so what we do is we make the gift, we buy the annuity, and then like that week we apply for medical assistance. And the form says, are you down to 3,000 in assets? Yes, we are. Did you make any gifts in the last 5 years? Yes, last week we gave a big gift, $250,000 to our kids. And so they say, okay, well, there's a penalty for that gift. And the penalty, they calculate it. I'm going to calculate it for you quickly here. So 250,000 divided by 7960 is the current divisor, 31 months. So they'll say, okay, for 31 months, you're on medical assistance. You actually will get some benefits from it, but we're not paying the nursing home for you. You got to pay for your own care for 31 months. That's your penalty. Well, the beauty of it is we bought the annuity to pay for your care for the next 31 months. Okay, so the annuity pays the penalty. Well, what if your cost of care goes up, right? That's a risk. Things get worse. All of a sudden you're paying $10,000 a month instead of $6,000. Where does that extra $4,000 a month come from? The gift you gave your kids. That's the idea. So once you get done, you finish paying the annuity, and now the county's going to start stepping in and paying, and your kids still have that pot of money. And what's really nice about it is, what if your kids move and you want to move to a different facility near them? Or, you know, the care just goes down. There's new management and it's not really where you want to be anymore. And you want to move to a new facility. Well, the new facility, almost all of them say you have to private pay for 1 year or two. You need like $100,000 or $200,000 to pay. Otherwise you can't move. And so you have a pot of money. You have the flexibility. You have the option of moving if you need to. If there's some kind of care you want that they don't cover, there's money there. So this is really a nice option. And of course, when you pass away, it can pass to your family if there's still money left. So I'm just going to say, if you have any questions on that, right now you can put them in chat. I don't see no comments lately. So what happened here in the first slide, remember you paid $590 for your care. In this case, you really paid the cost of the annuity about $290,000 for your care. And then the government paid, you can go back to the second one, Megan. The government paid about half and you paid about half. This annuity is definitely something you want to have an elder law attorney involved with. It's complicated. You can imagine the counties are a little more careful with them. They might ask for a little more document production. They want to make sure we really did it right. And if you do it wrong, the cost would be very high to you. So we are very careful with these, and we definitely want to be involved with them. And we also will do your medical assistance application at the same time. It's all on the up and up, but we definitely recommend that we be the ones communicating with the county and making sure that all the ducks are in a row before they even know that we're doing this. So we've been successfully doing this for a while. Okay, I have a question from Pat, I think it is. What happens if your kids spend all the money, but your care costs go up and you have no money to fulfill the penalty? Well, exactly, that's a risk, Pat. So this is not for everybody, because you cannot require that your kids pay this, because otherwise it would be your money still and the county would count it and you'd have to spend it. So that is definitely a big risk. If your kids spend all the money and your care cost goes up and you have no money to fulfill the penalty, you're back in the situation where the facility could maybe kick you out. We could, so you wouldn't have money left really for attorney's fees and that either. And you'd, I did have the woman I told you about at the beginning who was really in a pinch. I did some work for her pro bono because she was in such a pinch. And then I got legal aid to take her case. And so they're negotiating with them now and appealing. There are some bases for appeal, but you don't really want to put yourself in a position where you're doing an appeal. It's expensive and risky. We plan, Pat, what if care costs are higher than what the kids got in the annuity together? That's one of the reasons you have us involved. So we are going to make sure that that is not possible. So, yeah. So I don't want to go into too much complicated details, but this isn't for everybody and it's not for right now. You have to be in a facility that you are happy with. Your care costs have to be relatively stable. If it's something just happened and we're just not sure how it's going to shake out and it might be $12,000 a month or $2,000 a month, we're not going to do the annuity. It's too risky for you. So we watch out for that. But by your questions, Pat, I can tell you understand this. And hopefully other people understand it. It's the most complicated thing we talk about in this. And definitely when we walk clients through and we can put your numbers in your family situation, it's much more helpful than just the general. So thank you for those questions, Pat. Another thing that we can do is an asset protection trust. And I just had an attorney, an elder law attorney from Wisconsin call me about this yesterday. And had to tell her about Minnesota's unique rule. So in other states, you put in an asset protection trust, you put in your money, and then if it's more than 5 years that go by before you apply, medical assistance ignores it. That is not the position of the Department of Human Services in Minnesota. They do not honor these irrevocable asset protection trusts. They sort of cross out the word irrevocable. We think they're wrong. This is all under federal law. There is one case in Minnesota that says we're right about that. We would like to bring another case and appeal it, and we think we'd win. The problem is most of our clients, they don't want to do an asset protection strategy like a trust, knowing that if we need, that there's a good chance we'll have to go to court and spend $20,000, $30,000 in fees proving our case. So it's not the quick and easy answer that it is in all the other states. But it is a possibility, especially if you have more than 5 years. If you want to make a gift, you could make a gift more than 5 years ahead of time. So if you have more than 5 years, that'd be great to do, and you could put that in a trust, but you just cannot benefit from it at all. Okay, I hope that's not too confusing, but sometimes people know that that's an easy answer in other states, and it's not so easy in Minnesota. The next thing I want to tell you about, the next trap that you maybe don't know about, and a lot of our clients are surprised, is called estate recovery. So now,
sorry, Margaret, there's one question, and then I think you maybe should go to that.
Okay.
And because it's kind of on the same topic,
yeah,
the annuity.
The annuity, okay, it's just for care costs, because we have to be really careful with the price of the annuity, because if the benefit is too high, your income will be too high and it will kick you off of medical assistance. It's very complicated. So it's a great question, Pete, but the annuity, it comes to you, it comes as income, but then it should be equal to the care costs or a little lower, and never be over care costs. So we actually make the annuity equal to 28 days of care, because that's February. In all the other months that are like 30, 31 days of care, the kids are gonna have to pay a little bit extra every month except February, because it's very important that the annuity payout be less than or equal to care costs. Okay, so that's the annuity, then the asset protection trust, and then estate recovery. So when you pass away, I don't know if any of you have had this happen, but within 30 days, usually, your family get a letter in the mail and say, we're really sorry for your loss. Don't be spending any money, because we have a claim on your estate, and we come before everybody except the federal government. So please complete this form and mail it in within 30 days, which is like impossible to complete the form and mail it in 30 days. So the form will say, like, these were the assets in the estate. This is where the money went. This is how much is left. And then they want what's left. Now, if you're on medical assistance, you only have $3,000 left if you're single, but you might sometimes still have a life insurance policy. You may have had a house. And so these rules are complicated too, and they're not always followed consistently by the counties. It's a different department that handles estate recovery. And we just recommend that we help you there too. So we typically help our clients with this part too, because otherwise there can be some overreaching. I want to tell you one other thing. I don't have a slide for this. It's a COVID-19 issue I just heard about yesterday. So, most of us are getting a stimulus check, or all of us, maybe all of us. The counties in Minnesota have not yet decided, or I guess it's really DHS, if that's going to count as income for our medical assistance clients. So once you're on it, they're going to be monitoring. And every year when your Social Security adjusts or your pension payment, you got to give them the data. If you inherit money or something, if you get a big tax return, you got to report it to the county, and then they're going to want you to spend it on your care. So they're still deciding. We haven't heard yet about the stimulus checks, and I already have clients getting stimulus checks, and we don't know yet if we have to report them. They might let them go, which would be super. So that's the kind of thing that is, that's a good example of a complication that comes up with medical assistance, and people have lots of great questions all the time like that. So that's why I would say it's not a do-it-yourself problem. I know sometimes people say, well, the facility applied for my mom and it went fine. And, sometimes it goes fine. And I just can't recommend that people do this themselves, because it's much easier for us to prepare something ahead of time and plan and get it approved than to pick up something that is not done as ideally, because well-meaning people just didn't know. Like, who knows these complicated rules? It's just totally reasonable to me that people don't know them. And so then there's a problem. And a lot of times people will get a penalty or something and they'll panic and come in. And, a lot of times we can help them get past it, or at least manage it as best as possible. But I don't recommend doing it yourself, because there's just too many problems. I also would say with facilities, some facilities do a good job, but some have caused my clients a lot of trouble, because they'll throw in an application and the person is over assets, and they give extra information that wasn't even asked for, and the county gets all suspicious. It's a problem. I had a really sweet client. well, the client died now, so now we're working with her daughter, and we were working with her daughter before, and her daughter's working full time and has kids and has so much going on, and her mom got sick and went in the nursing home, and the facility applied, and they gave all these statements. And then they sent like all these questions. You need to explain this, 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 and this. They got scared and they came to us, which I'm glad they did. But what happened is they didn't have our advice before they applied. And so the facility, for one thing, she was over assets. They never should have even applied. And then they gave in statements that would show money going from the mother to the daughter. And and it was all legitimate because the daughter would run all these errands and buy all these foods and do all this work for her, but it wasn't documented for medical assistance. So she had to go back and document months back and document as best as she could. And it was royal pain for her. We did get almost all of it approved in the end. But what happened is the county was very suspicious going forward because of that and made things more difficult. They actually issued an order one time. I was out of town on business, and they said she had to get this house on the market within a week. And anyway, it was difficult. So I wouldn't recommend doing it yourself. Now, I'm not seeing the do-it-yourself slide, Megan. So I don't know if it's a tech problem. Yeah, there it is. Not a do-it-yourself project. Okay. So I'm sorry, my slides got mixed up. I should have stapled them. You can go to the next one, Megan, since I can't. Yes. Okay. I've given you a ton of information. And I just want to give you a chance to step back and kind of get back to the big picture again. So if you, I don't know if you printed this out on paper, you probably didn't because we didn't send it to you yet. So you get to visually check this in your mind, okay? Are you concerned about running out of money for your care? Or are you concerned about a loved one? Is that why you're here today? Did this talk about gifts kind of scare you? Have you made gifts or something that you didn't get equal money back for in the last 5 years or so that you're worried about? Or are you in the category, I just want to be educated on my options for long-term care? Now, we really recommend that you do this if you are, I would say, if you think you might need care in the next 5 years or 10, or if you're, even over 60, 65. If you have, like I said, a single person with $500,000, $600,000 in assets, for sure I would do it. Or a couple with $1 million, I for sure would do it. You might have a cabin you want to keep in the family. You might have more assets, but I want to keep this cabin in the family or this business, or there's different situations. So these are the situations that I think it's a good time to start checking into this and see if you should make an asset protection plan. I mean, if you're 40 and you're healthy, you probably don't need to do it. If you have $10 million, we can probably quickly work with you and figure out that you're fine. So, but most people who are older or have some health issues, it would be good for you to get more education than what we're doing today on your health options. So the action steps I have for you, 2 things for right now that I'm going to explain. If you want to take what you learned today and just start taking the next step, you can request an asset summary from us. This is the form we do for all our clients. We summarize your assets. And it would really be good for you to do this. For one thing, it would help you get a good picture, and it would help your loved ones if something happened to have everything in one place. If you're going to talk to us or an attorney and they want to know, well, what's your asset situation? It's just a really useful document. So that one will say, like, yeah, I got these bank accounts, they're joint or they're not, or who are they joint with, and this is the amount. And having that right there will give you a good snapshot to start looking at things. Next, you can request a link to this elder law video. Be proactive. I was on Marianne Hanson's cable show like 1.5 years ago, or 2 years. She has the longest running cable show in the country, and she's right here. And she's really, I know I talk fast. Mary Nelson talks slow. So it's a really nice paced talk. If you think I'm talking too fast, I think that I talk slower in that one. So that's another one you could share with your family members or watch that if you want to know a little more. I talk about the annuities in that one too. And so if you would like either of those, you can put that in the chat, okay? Please tell us if you want the asset summary and the elder law video. Megan will email them to you, probably today or maybe tomorrow. Now I'm up to the questions. So, all right. So thank you. We see Pat wants the video link, and be happy to send that. So now I see there's a question from Daniela. What about gifts that happen 5 years before someone applies for MA? Do they penalize that? Nope, they don't. You have 60 months, Daniela. But if you, you know, they talk about changing that. Like I know some states has 2 years. So there's always a risk that they would change it. But right now, if you are planning more than 5 years ahead, that's really good. And I just did that for an elderly clients. In December, we did an irrevocable trust, and they gave a big gift to their 4 kids, and we think they'll be fine. They have enough money to cover their care. So that was successful, and that can work well. Okay, Pete would like both, Linda wants both, and Cindy wants both. Great. It's just, there's one form and one link, though. One form and one link to the video that's on our YouTube channel. So do you have more questions? Are you just overwhelmed? I'll pause longer than usual. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Can I unmute everybody, Megan? Let's see. I have to do them all one by one. I guess if you want to be unmuted, you could tell me in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to...
I think they can unmute themselves if they want to talk. I feel like we should unmute everyone. We might have those tech issues again. Oh, there's
Okay.
another Q&A. Hold on.
Oh,
the question is, do I talk to Megan for an individual meeting? Yes.
Yes, we're getting to that, Pete. Thank you. That is exactly what we do. So if anybody wants to be unmuted, you can tell me that in the chat function, and I will unmute everybody at the end when I'm not really talking. How about that? Okay, any other questions? Okay, then I will, you know, we're going to give you an opportunity to have those individual questions answered. I told you that before. So, did we answer that? Yes. Okay, sorry, I'm just doing some management here. I want to tell you about our final free thing we want to offer you. And this is really the best thing. So, because this is a one-on-one consultation with Megan, who has been doing these for a long time and is really good at it and understands. So we want to learn, first of all, about your situation, you know, and it's a confidential conversation. First of all, it just is because we're lawyers, and that's the ethical rules. But we want you to know that we ask you questions maybe your brother doesn't know, but it helps us to know all these questions are important. You know, how is your health? How's your relationships? What are your finances? And then we can kind of tell you, like, you're in a good position to do an asset protection plan. And this is how it works. And this is what the cost is. And we can answer you questions. And there's no obligation. So we really encourage you to take advantage of this because, for one thing, you know, we want to be giving back to people at this time. And that's why we're doing these webinars, and we're trying to change things up and offer more value. And so we want to do our part to give back. We appreciate that you're taking the time to come here today. Some of you have been here at other webinars recently that we've been doing. And we really want to take the time. Now we can do it. Megan put virtual on there. We don't know exactly when we'll be doing them in person again. We're playing that by ear to keep you safe and, of course, you know, our staff safe and everything. But we have gotten pretty adept at doing everything virtual except for little sound problems today. So, and even the signing, the meetings, the whole thing we can do without meeting you. Right now with these, even if you did any estate planning, sometimes people realize as part of this, oh, your estate plan, you want to update that? We can do that virtually. We can have somebody come to your home to notarize documents and things like that. So we've got it all worked out. We'd be happy to do that. So yes, please talk to Megan about this. You can put in the chat or the Q&A, tell us if you're interested, and she'll send a link to you in the email afterward, because you'll get a is it audio or video, Megan? Anyway, you'll get a copy of this talk.
It's a YouTube link. I'll upload it, but it does take,
Okay.
I would say, it might not be till tomorrow until I get it uploaded. It does take a little bit to upload.
Okay, and hopefully without all the tech problems cut out.
Yeah, I'll edit that out. Yep.
You'll get that. And then, anyway, she'll stay there. She'll have a link in there. But it's quicker if you get on the calendar. So she has actually a pretty busy calendar these days. People are really concerned about this stuff. But she set aside time for people in this talk, like this week or maybe next week, where you can have a conversation before you forget everything I said in this talk, which I don't know, might not be very long, but at least if you could remember the main points, she'll remember what you don't. But we find if you do it sooner, it's less overwhelming. So we encourage you to take advantage of that. We'd be really happy and honored actually to work with you one-on-one and see if we could help.
There's one more question, Margaret.
Okay, I'm gonna skip the story, Megan, because it's 1 o'clock.
Okay.
We had the
tech, yep. Do you see the question?
I know, I don't understand it though. Let's see.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to unmute you, Pat. I don't know, when I click unmute, it's not unmuting. So that's weird.
Maybe if Pat sends us an email after this, we can, and just to clarify that question, we'd be happy to answer that.
Or you could call in. Yeah, let me look at it again, Pat, because I'm not understanding this. I have a lot of receipts to track and no time. Do we provide financial management services tracking invoices? We would do that. Yeah, that's the kind of practical problem that we help people solve. Or if we don't do it, we might know a service. We know lots of other senior services that we network with. And that if it's somebody else who can do it more cost effectively than we can, we'll refer it. We'll recommend somebody else who could do that for you. There's people who do that. Or we could do it. We have paralegal and legal assistants that can do that stuff. So we know not everybody is really administrative and really liking to do all the paperwork. So we'll just meet you where you're at and do the level of service that you want us to do. So thank you everybody for being here today. Megan and I really appreciate it. I forgot to introduce Megan at the beginning, but Megan is the Client Relations Director, and she does these initial meetings and helps people come through the first process of getting everything ready before it goes over to the legal team, and then we provide the legal services. So we work closely together all the time on making sure that people's needs are met before they're hiring us. You want to say hi, Megan?
Hello.
Yeah. So she'd be happy to talk to you further. So thank you again. You again will get the email. You're welcome. We would appreciate your feedback.